tent was sliced open from the inside. They had fled into the frozen, sub-zero wilderness of a remote Soviet mountain, some without shoes or even coats. Later, when their bodies were found, the official investigation would be closed with a cryptic, impossible conclusion, and the files classified for decades. What could be so terrifying that 9 experienced professional hikers would choose a certain freezing death over staying in the safety of their shelter for one more second? In the winter of 1959, in the heart of the Soviet Union, a group of highly skilled hikers from the Ural Polytechnical Institute embarked on an adventure. They were not amateurs. They were all grade 2 hikers with extensive experience in long-range skiing and mountain expeditions. Their leader was 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, a talented engineering student and a seasoned outdoorsman. Their goal was ambitious: to achieve grade 3 certification, the highest in the Soviet Union, by trekking across the treacherous northern Ural Mountains and summiting Mount Otorten. Today, we open the archives to investigate the final, fatal journey of the Dyatlov Group, a story of courage, a mystery of baffling evidence, and a case that remains one of the most disturbing and deeply researched unsolved incidents in modern history. The journey began with optimism and camaraderie. The group's recovered journals and photographs paint a vivid picture of their expedition. We see them smiling, laughing, traveling by train and truck to the farthest reaches of civilization. Their early journal entries speak of the beauty of the landscape and the easy friendships within the group. On January 27th, one member, Yuri Yudin, was forced to turn back due to severe joint pain. It was a moment of sad farewells, but a decision that would ultimately save his life. The remaining 9, 7 men and 2 women, pressed on, alone in the vast, empty wilderness. Their intended route would take them onto the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, a mountain whose name, in the language of the indigenous Mansi people, translates to Dead Mountain, a place of powerful local legends, a place they were warned not to go. The Mansi believed the mountain was home to powerful spirits, and that 9 hunters had once vanished on its slopes, giving the mountain its ominous name. Unbeknownst to the Dyatlov Group, they were about to become the mountain's next legend. On February 1st, the group began their ascent onto the mountain's slopes. Terrible weather, including high winds and blinding snow, caused them to deviate from their planned route. Instead of finding a forested area to make camp, they found themselves on an exposed, open slope. Here, for reasons that are still debated, they pitched their tent for the night. It was their last camp. When the group failed to send a telegram by their scheduled deadline of February 12th, there was initially little concern. Delays in such expeditions were common. But as the days turned into weeks, a volunteer search party was assembled. On February 26th, they finally spotted the Dyatlov Group's camp on the slope of Kholat Syakhl. The scene they discovered was not one of simple tragedy, but of profound, terrifying mystery. The tent was half buried in snow, clearly abandoned. More unsettling, it had been sliced and ripped open from the inside, a clear sign of a desperate escape. Yet, all of the group's belongings, their warm coats, their boots, their food, their axes, were left behind, neatly arranged. A trail of footprints from 8 or 9 people led away from the camp, down the snowy slope. The footprints presented an immediate contradiction. They were from bare feet, socks, and only a single boot. Yet they were orderly, not scattered, suggesting the group had walked calmly away from their camp and into the deadly sub-zero temperatures. The search party followed the tracks downhill towards the edge of a nearby forest over a mile away. There, under a large, ancient cedar tree, they made their first grim discovery: the bodies of Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonyshenko. They were stripped down to their underwear. Their hands were burned and scraped raw. The branches of the cedar tree above them were broken up to a height of 15 feet, suggesting one of them had frantically tried to climb it, perhaps to get a better view of the tent or to escape from something on the ground. A small, extinguished fire lay nearby. The official cause of death was simple: hypothermia, but this simple answer only created deeper questions. Why were they in their underwear? Why had they left their warm clothes behind, only to die of the cold? The searchers then found the next 3 bodies, including that of Igor Dyatlov, between the cedar tree and the camp. Their positions suggested they had been attempting to return to the tent. Dyatlov was found clutching a small branch, his other arm raised as if to shield his face. Zenaida Kolmogorova's body showed signs of a desperate crawl back up the slope. Rustem Slobodin had a fractured skull, though doctors deemed it a non-fatal injury. Like the first 2, they had all frozen to death. 5 bodies found, all dead from hypothermia. It was a tragedy, but the central mystery remained. What force had compelled them to abandon their tent in the first place? It would take more than 2 months for the remaining 4 hikers to be found. In May, as the snow began to melt, their bodies were discovered buried under 13 feet of snow in a makeshift den they had dug in a ravine not far from the cedar tree. And it was with these last 4 bodies that the true, unspeakable horror of the Dyatlov Pass Incident was finally revealed. These hikers were better dressed than the others, some wearing the clothes of their fallen comrades in a desperate attempt to stay warm, but their cause of death was not hypothermia. Lyudmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov had suffered massive chest fractures, injuries consistent with the force of a car crash. Nikolai Thibault Brignol had a crushed skull. These were catastrophic, violent injuries, yet mystifyingly, the bodies had no external wounds, no soft tissue damage, as if they had been crushed by an immense invisible pressure. The horror deepened. Upon closer examination, it was discovered that Lyudmila Dubinina was missing her tongue, her eyes, and part of her lips. Alexander Kolovatov was also missing his eyes. While investigators officially attributed these specific injuries to natural scavenging and decomposition in the ravine's running water, many researchers find that explanation unsatisfying given the other bizarre evidence. To add another layer of strangeness, some of their clothing was found to contain notable levels of radioactive contamination, not high enough to be lethal, but significant enough to be unexplainable, with theories ranging from military fallout to contamination from thorium-based lantern mantles. The official Soviet investigation was now faced with an impossible set of facts. 9 experienced hikers flee their tent by cutting it open from within, abandoning their life-saving gear. They walk calmly into a deathly freeze. Some die of cold, while others suffer bone-shattering internal injuries with no external signs of a struggle. Some bodies are missing soft tissues, and some are radioactive. The case was a vortex of contradictions and high strangeness. In late May of 1959, the inquest was abruptly closed. The official cause of death for the entire group was declared to be a compelling natural force. The lead investigator, Lev Ivanov, would later write in his private memoirs that he was ordered by high-level Soviet officials to close the case and classify the findings. The files were sealed, and for the next 30 years, the truth of what happened on Dead Mountain was buried by the state. The official answer was not an answer at all. It was a command to stop asking questions. The closure and classification of the files only fueled speculation, giving birth to a host of theories, each attempting to make sense of the impossible. Theory 1. The Avalanche. For decades, this has been the leading rational explanation. The theory suggests that a delayed slab avalanche, where a thick, heavy plate of snow slides down as a single unit, struck the tent in the middle of the night. The initial impact could have caused the severe internal injuries without piercing the tent fabric, and the terrifying sound and pressure would have sent the survivors into a panic, forcing them to cut their way out and flee downhill. Recent scientific modeling has even shown that a specific combination of conditions, a low slope, stiff winds creating an overhanging snow slab, and the hikers cutting into the slope to pitch their tent, could have created the precise conditions for such a rare event. However, the avalanche theory faces significant, and to some, insurmountable criticism. The search party found that the tent was only partially covered, not crushed, with its poles still largely intact. The hikers' own orderly footprints were visible starting directly from the tent, not the chaotic scene an avalanche would leave. And most critically, the members of the Dyatlov Group were expert skiers who understood mountain safety. The choice to camp on an open slope remains one of the most baffling parts of the mystery, and many believe they would never have done so if there was even the slightest risk of an avalanche. Theory 2. The military weapons test. This theory posits that the hikers were unwilling witnesses or victims of a secret Soviet military exercise. The area was, after all, within the Soviet Union during the height of the Cold War, a time of intense and often reckless weapons development. The compelling natural force cited in the official report, proponents argue, was a convenient cover-up for a tragic accident. This theory could account for the radiation traces found on the clothing, and it is strongly supported by the government's suspicious haste in closing the case and classifying the files. Furthermore, other hiking and geological groups in the region at the time reported seeing strange, glowing orange spheres moving silently in the night sky around the dates of the incident. This has fueled speculation about secret rocket tests, parachute mines that produce concussive force without shrapnel, or even more exotic radiological or neurological weapons that could induce panic and cause the bizarre injuries. The primary argument against this theory, however, is a complete lack of physical evidence at the site. Investigators found no craters, no metal fragments, and no signs of an explosion. It seems unlikely that even a secret test could have been conducted with such precision as to leave no trace upon the landscape. Theory 3. The unknown encounter. This is where the story enters the realm of the Bestiary archive, where we consider possibilities that defy conventional explanation. This theory posits that the hikers were driven from their tent not by snow or by man, but by something else. A creature, an entity. The local Mansi people have legends dating back centuries of the mink, a large, ape-like humanoid that inhabits the deep forests of the Urals, known to be fiercely territorial and violent. An attack by such a large, powerful creature could certainly explain the violent, crushing injuries found on the last 4 bodies. The sheer primal terror of such an encounter would also explain why 9 experienced hikers would abandon all logic and gear fleeing into a blizzard. This theory is often supported by a single cryptic photograph, the last frame taken on one of the hikers' cameras. The blurry, chaotic image, when enhanced, appears to some researchers to show a large, dark, upright figure standing amongst the trees. Skeptics, however, argue the image is simply an accidental shot of a fellow hiker or a tree branch, and the most powerful argument against this theory remains the same as it was in 1959. The search party found no animal tracks, and no tracks of any kind besides those of the 9 hikers themselves. But these explanations, rational or fantastic, still leave questions. If it was an avalanche, why were the footprints so orderly? If it was the military, why were there no signs of explosions or shrapnel? If it was a creature, why did it let them walk away from the tent, only to die from the elements? Ultimately, the Dyatlov Pass Incident endures as a masterpiece of terror precisely because it refuses to be solved. It is a perfect, chilling mosaic of conflicting evidence, where every rational explanation is contradicted by an impossible fact. It is a heartbreaking story of exploration turned to terror, leaving behind a cold, silent mystery that demands to be remembered here, within the Bestiary archive. Thank you for joining us in the Bestiary archive. If this story has captured your curiosity, I invite you to subscribe to ensure you don't miss our next exploration. You can also watch another story now by selecting one of the videos on screen.